Hello everyone. I thought I'd do a little blog today about just shooting a really good interview, making it sound nice and editing it well. And this is the little studio where I shoot a lot of videos at work. I have a Canon HF-G10 that I use to shoot the video primarily. Have a stool for the person, the interviewee, to be sitting on. I like to mic people overhead with a second microphone, and this is a Zoom H2, which is a very nice little microphone, and it sounds way better always than what comes off of the camcorder. So we have a nice background behind here. Sometimes we do green screen. You can see we have a whole wall that's green screen. We have several walls that are if we want to do large groups of people and key out the backgrounds. So I'm going to shoot just a little bit of an interview about my approach, and then we're going to edit that in the studio, and I'll give you some of my tips that I like to use with doing interviews and this sort of video editing. Okay, first of all, I like to have the subject well lit, and we have a nice little bank of lights here. I also like to have the subject sitting on a stool, not a chair that they can slouch back into. Many times I've gone to interview someone, a doctor or a patient or someone that has a good story to tell, and they're sitting in a chair with a back on it, and they start very stiff and rigid and upright, and then they start to slunch lower and lower and lower in the frame. They kind of slide down. So I find that a nice stool makes everybody sit up straight, and they sort of stay consistently framed in the video, and I'm able to ask questions rather than have to worry about reframing the shot. The next thing, I make sure that the microphone is out of the field of view, but if it is, it doesn't hurt. You can always mask that out, and I can show you a way to do that later. I try to always start my interviews with a hand clap. You know, you've seen the big clapper things, that the action type thing, and they clap the board together in movies. I always try to get my camcorder rolling, get my audio rolling, and say, all right, folks, I'm going to do a hand clap here that will help me synchronize my audio to my video. They always understand what that is, and I give them a big clap like this. Now, the thing, if you forget to do that at the beginning of the video, you can do it at the end of the video. You can just line up. I realize there are ways you can do this now with Premiere Pro CC. You can match the audio to the video. But to me, it's really nice to have that absolute spike where you can go in with audio and line up those the waves, the audio wave and the wave that matches up to the video. I always try to get the white balance set if possible, and if not, then I shoot in auto a lot with the camcorder. Just because I know that will give me a safe enough parameter that if I've not had a chance to do a really good white set, that I can go in with fast color corrector with Adobe Premiere Pro CC and fix the color. It gets me close enough that I know I'm at least in the ballpark. Okay, to shoot a great interview, you really should know a little bit about the subject and what they're there to talk about before they come in. Anytime I shoot a doctor or a specialist or someone who has a story to tell, I try to research that person. I try to know the who, what, when, where, why, as much as I can without going too deep into studying them. I want still to have that little bit of curiosity for myself. I want to be that everyman who really seems to know nothing, but I want to know a little bit so that I can at least ask the pertinent questions. I always try to find some questions that are going to be different than what they're expecting. I'm trying to pull emotion out of people. One of the biggest challenges you face when you interview someone is just that fear that they're going to have of the gear, of how am I going to look? Am I going to look stupid on the camera? How do you get them relaxed? This is kind of what I think is one of my superpowers, is getting people relaxed, because they always come in and they always, they're always very uptight. Not everyone. Some people are an absolute natural. Some people can look right down the barrel of the camera like I'm looking right now, and they can relax. They can talk to the camera. Now, right now, I'm talking to the camera. When I interview someone, I try to get them to turn to one side or the other, and I try to sit with my head off about 2 or 3 feet back to the other side, one way or the other of the camera. And then I try, right now I'm centered up in the center of this frame. Let's say that I'm going to shoot a doctor and we're going to talk about cancer or something. Then I'm going to get that guy to turn mostly this way so that he's sort of in the frame like this. And then I'm going to be sitting over here about like this, and I'm going to ask him the questions, and I'm going to have him look at me. If he can look at me and talk to me like a human being, just eye-to-eye contact, then he's not seeing a blinking red light. He's not seeing something that's going to throw him off. And if you watch 60 Minutes, if you watch Dateline, anytime there's an interview, typically that's what you get. You get this sort of angle, and you can tell that they're looking at a person, they're talking to them. And if it's a person-to-person eye contact type thing, people tend to really relax. The other thing I try to do when I conduct an interview is I try to tell them right up front, hey, just chill out. This is just old Tony talking to you. I'm just plain old regular Joe. I don't want them to think that, that they're on the spot any at all. If you can get a person realizing that they're at home and they're comfortable, and that what I tell them is, just talk to me like I don't know anything about what your subject is. Typically, I don't know a whole lot. I have done a little bit of research before, but I really don't know. I know enough to ask intelligent questions, and that's about it. And I want my curiosity to draw them out. So as I'm sitting talking with them, I might take a notepad and just jot a word or two down when they bring up something that I don't know about or something I want more clarification. I don't sit and look at my hand the whole time while they're talking to me. I try to make as much eye contact as I can and just jot a note down once in a while that I can ask them to elaborate about. What I'm looking for is to make the interviewee seem human, seem accessible, seem in touch with reality. I don't want them to seem lofty or untouchable or boring in any way. And I think the more personal you get with someone, then the more I think the audience is going to identify with what they're saying. You want to make sure that your person you're talking with is comfortable. If they need water, if they need something to drink, if it's a little hot in the studio, maybe because of the lights, they have something they can wipe off with. We have a full-length mirror here in our little studio, and before I have them sit down in front of the camera, I always have them check themselves out in the full-length mirror, just so they know if their hair looks weird, or they've got some kind of something on their face, maybe they got spinach in their teeth. They get that chance to look at themselves, and that sort of puts them at ease a little bit before they go in front of the camera too, just to know that they've had a chance to really look at themselves. Like I've got some food on my shirt right now. Wish that wasn't on there, but at any rate, that will give them the opportunity to know that that they look the best they can look, at least in their estimation, before they go in front of the camera. One of the things I try to do is smile a lot. And here's a big thing. The more you smile, the more you make eye contact with the person you're interviewing, the more at ease they're going to become. You don't want to get creepy about it, but as you're listening to them, just nod and keep your mouth shut. I just kind of like this. I know it looks goofy, but the thing that a lot of people, when they first start interviewing people, do is they're bad to go, oh. You don't want any of those little utterances. You have to learn to ask the question, keep your mouth shut, and do a lot of this. So you acknowledge them, you communicate through eye contact, through head nods. You can do a lot of times I'll do the hands. They'll make some really good point, and I'll say, a good point. And I try to communicate with them and be totally silent, so I don't have to go back and post and edit out all my grunting and and ah and and oh wow, yeah, okay, cool. A big time rookie mistake when you hear these people. And always take your time too. At the end of a lot of times you'll think that they're coming to the end of the phrase they're going to say, and you'll want to butt in with a new question. Always give 2 or 3 seconds of silence before you ask the next question. A person might say, yes, I've been a doctor for 24 years, and I worked in Ohio, and I worked in Nebraska, and then maybe they stop, and then they start again with something else, and you'll be talking right over the top of what they're saying. So I always try to make absolutely sure that the last phrase they say, that they're totally finished then, before I start butting in with a question. If you've never had a journalism class, it might be good to do a little bit of online studying about journalism and the kind of questions that journalists ask. All of us are taught when we're in journalism. I was an English major in college, to ask who, what, when, where, why. Those are your 5 questions that you want to make sure that you cover. But then there's also what you do is let everything else ripple off of that. You find out, number one, it depends on what, let's say I'm talking to somebody about a guitar technique or something. Who taught you the guitar, this guitar technique? When did you learn it? How old were you? What was it that made you decide to start studying this? What was it that fascinated you about it? You ask them questions like, where was the first time you employed it? How exactly does it work? You ask those who, what, when, where, why questions, and what will happen as they answer those questions, a lot of other little things will start popping up in the background that you can ask for greater elaboration about. I would look for what I call moments of intensity too. As you're interviewing a person, you'll start to sense what they're really passionate about and try to latch onto that. Look for those moments when they seem really intense, when they've made a statement that really seems heartfelt, and then try to get them to expound upon that. If you can find those little intense moments, those moments that seem to be emotional, you can mine those and you can get really, journalistic gold, interview type gold. Sometimes you get people to say something that's very profound, sometimes something that's emotional to a point where they might cry, emotional to the point where they might laugh, which I think is maybe even more important than crying. If you can get them to give you something really deep-rooted within themselves, then the interview becomes much more interesting. Okay, so we're going to go back in the studio and I'm going to edit some of this video and I'm going to show you kind of how I would do that. I'm going to shoot also a little bit against a green screen so that you can see how to key a little bit in Adobe Premiere Pro CC.